Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Room Schoolhouse. Today we are talking about someone known as the Angel of the Rockies, that's Clara Brown. And if you don't know her story, by the end, for me it reminds me a little bit of like It's a Wonderful Life, where there's like kind of influence at the beginning, there's struggle, middle, end, and at the very end, like there's an amazing bow on the end of it. You'll see as we go through the story. But Clara Brown was someone, like many of the people we've talked about, was born into slavery. She was born in Tennessee. When she was 3, she and her mother were sold to somebody in Virginia. And really, she kind of moved around a lot as a slave. When she was 18, she married a man. They had 4 kids. And then, unfortunately, one of the tragic things that happened in many of the slavery areas and territories is that families would be sold and go different directions. On this occasion, the owner died and they decided to separate the estate. And when they divided the estate, Clara was removed from her family. And this is kind of the unfolding of some of her hardships and tragedy of her life.
Right. So I just want to back up a little bit. So you mentioned she had 4 kids. So she had 3 daughters and a son. And her story really captured my little mama heart over here. Throughout her story, she just shows how big her heart is for not only her children, but society as a whole, because she's a very Christian and wonderful woman. She's actually featured in the Colorado Women's Hall of Fame, and her picture's on the Capitol there. She has an incredible story. So just to get into it, you mentioned the original master died, and so the family was broken up, and she was actually sold to a man that took her to Kentucky to work on a tobacco farm. So he died 32 years later and left her a substantial amount of money. And with that money, she was able to afford her freedom.
Which, let's also pause for a second. How influential or how liked did you have to be as a slave that you get a part of the inheritance, and apparently a substantial part of the inheritance? I can only imagine what other family members might have thought in this moment, right? As dad's will's being read, and they're like, wait a second, you're giving money to who? It's worth noting that in some of these scenarios, when we talk about some of these people that were enslaved, slavery was an evil institution. And so many evil, awful, terrible things happened in the midst of slavery. There were situations, though, where there were some people that owned slaves that maybe didn't treat everybody as terribly, as awful, as evil as other slave owners did. And like this story of Clara Brown, this is a unique story, but it's not so unique that you don't see other examples of this throughout history, where a master would really like someone, or maybe a household slave who was helping the family and helping raise the kids, and they would get a part of the estate. So it's worth noting, like, big deal. She gets a huge portion of this inheritance, enough that not only can she buy her own freedom, but it's enough that she can go set herself up somewhere else and be kind of comfortable in this new life.
For sure. So yeah, like you mentioned, a lot of times when masters would die, they would leave a lot of their sums of money, and we can trace this going on in the Founding Fathers. So Clara heard that her family may have gone out west because this was the start of the gold rush. So she started heading out west in hopes to find her family, which she had been separated from 32 years earlier. But you never forget your children, and you're after your husband. It's such a story of love. So she ends up leaving. She starts going out west on this wagon train. She leaves the wagon train in Denver, making her the first Black American to settle in Denver. So the Rockies, right? Angel of the Rockies. So she started working on this wagon trail as a midwife. So in midwifery, you have a bunch of basic medical training. So she used this money that she gained from that experience to reinvest her money in real estate and other things like that. So she started growing her money more and more. And it's really incredible how she was able to just bless those around her through the money that she reinvested. She was a member of her church, but what I find fascinating about her is she actually gave so much money to other denominations. So I feel like people in the religious realm get really stuck in their one denomination and kind of ostracize or demonize other denominations. But this is a great example of her spreading her wealth for the greater glory of God, right?
And this is something too, as you're talking about spreading your wealth, it's, again, worth noting she had some wealth to spread, because by 1865, she was considered one of the wealthiest women in the West.
Yes.
And again, this is a big deal that this is a lady And you're talking about someone who is recently a slave, and up to this point, 1865, we're talking now the end of the Civil War. You're talking some changes in the law with the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment as this is all unfolding around this time. But this is before even then. She's out west. She's owning property. She's expanding her holdings and her wealth. She's frugal. She's giving to so many people in need, so many charities, so many churches. Also at this time, she realizes that I don't think my family's out west, right? Initially, we need to go west. I'm looking for my family because she just wants to find her family that was really taken from her, that was lost. So at this point, she says, okay, I'm going back to the east, right? Go back toward Kentucky where I'd last seen them. I'm going to go back and look for them. And so she decides we're packing up and we're going to look for the family. And when she gets back to Kentucky, unfortunately, she discovers that some of her family's already died. Her husband died. Her son died. One of her daughters.
Well, her husband died and her daughter died. Her son and 2 daughters died. Her son was bought and sold so much that it was impossible to keep track of him.
No idea where he went.
Right. So the only daughter that she knew was still out there, hopefully, was Eliza Jane. So she tried her best to track her down.
Very, very unfruitful at this point.
Yeah.
However, she realizes that because now slavery's ended, there's a lot of, at this point, former slaves who don't really know what to do or where to go. And so you see this mama come out where she's like, okay, I'm going to help you guys. And she actually leads a movement from the east back out to Colorado to help resettle a lot of these former slaves, to help them find not just a new home, but a new life.
And so when Clara Brown ended up coming to Colorado and bringing all of those former black slaves with her, she was trying to teach them different trades and crafts and help build that new life. And sure enough, that was already an initiative by Frederick Pitkin, who was the Colorado governor at the time. And so they met together and they decided that Clara and himself would help in this initiative in getting black Americans to come from Kansas to populate Colorado and build a brand new life in the freedom of that frontier.
Just to be clear, that Pitkin, was he Republican or Democrat?
He was Republican.
Okay, great.
Historic side note, just Republican effort, anti-slavery, equality, Republican history, not Democrat history, just not political, historical side note.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wig.
And not just resettle them. She actually, once again, that Mama Heart coming through, she actually worked with several black young women to get them involved in their education and got them actually started in college.
Now, one of the sad parts of the story is over the next several years, there was several significant things that happened, kind of disasters financially for her, that she loses nearly all of her wealth. Also along this time, she gets word, people have known her, she's helped so many people, right? Angel of the Rockies, she was loved by so many people, and they knew her story. They knew she was trying to find her family. So word gets to her that, hey, we think we found your missing daughter. And she's able to finally connect with her missing daughter, Eliza, and daughter has a daughter, so now she's a grandma, right? She's able to get her daughter and granddaughter to move to Colorado with her, but when they come out, from Iowa where they had been, but when they come out, she has no wealth, no money anymore, so it's really kind of a sad scenario. The family comes and she has nothing for them, but people find out that Clara's now on hard times. And she had helped so many people. This is where I mentioned in the beginning, it's like It's a Wonderful Life story. People found out that she needed help, and people began sending donations. They began sending money to help sustain her the end of her life, to help her now being able to take care of her daughter and her granddaughter along the way. And it's this incredible story of how, because she was able to bless and serve and help so many people, they wanted to bless and help and serve her at the end of her life. So she's able to be financially stable enough to take care of her family for the last couple of years until finally she gets sick and passes away.
Right. So she gets to spend those last 3 years of her life with her daughter and her granddaughter, living comfortably with the money that through God's providence was given to her. So when she died, her funeral was such a big deal because she played such a big role in everyone's life. She was so famous at that time just through her philanthropy and her mama's heart. And the story just got around. So actually the mayor of Denver actually attended her funeral, and it was a huge event, and I'm sure it was super celebratory because of everything that had gone through in her life. So, and like I mentioned, her picture was put up at a stained glass in the Colorado Capitol.
Yeah. Well, and you know you're a big deal when the political leaders need to show up for your funeral, right? When you mentioned the mayor of Denver, the governor of Colorado even makes an appearance. Like, she was a big deal in Colorado, and then to be recognized as state capital. She's someone that is historically easy to identify, to learn so many more of her stories. We have only briefly covered big picture of her story. She helped so many people. There's so many amazing stories about her. To find out more, you can go online and look for her, or go to WallBuilders.com, where we certainly have more information on her. There's footnotes to this story if you want to go to some of those original sources, see some more of those details about her. And if you want to know more of these great American heroes, tune in next time to One Room Schoolhouse.